Welcome to another steampunk making video. This one involves making something a little bit bigger than lots of the other machines I've made. It's to design and make a background that will support all of the machines so that I can demonstrate them at future steampunk fairs and events. This was the idea I came up with. It's 4 meters wide by about 2 meters high with a little bit in the middle, the sign. It supports the 6 machines as well. I did consider using a mini metal scaffolding kit, but again it was very expensive and it would have been very heavy, so I went back to using wood. This was an early idea with triangulation, because I also considered having all sorts of moving mechanisms and a rotating QR code on the back, but realised that that would just detract from what I was talking about. This is the final idea I came up with 3 vertical legs and 3 horizontal sections. So time to resurrect the crosscut saw. These are great because they cut at 90 degrees perpendicular and whatever the other one is, and you can use a chair to support the end of the wood. Once the wood is marked out the cut, you know that when you bring the saw blade down it will be at 90 degrees all round, which is very important when you're building a construction or a structure that needs to be at 90 degrees. Because lots of the teeth are missing, having been misused on the saw blade, I needed to sand all the pieces of wood afterwards. It's also nice to do it because it means there's less chance when you're assembling or disassembling of getting splinters. And I thought I'd mention again, like I do regularly, the air cleaner, the filter, which is brilliant. It circulates all the air in the workshop and keeps all the sawdust out. I'm going to round off the longitudinal edges of the wood with a lovely old plane, my favourite one as it happens. Such an ancient tool and so effective and efficient. Just extend the blade through a little slot in the base and you know that it's going to cut that depth. So just running along each side is brilliant, and you also get something you can use for packing Christmas gifts in or starting bonfires. I'm going to use 3 really heavy duty cast brackets, shelf brackets, because most of the force that the machines are going to exert on the structure is going to be trying to topple it forward, so it's important they're strong. Lovely extractor with vacuum, which has a switch where you can plug a power tool into it. When you start the power tool, the vacuum starts, which is fantastic. Sucks all the dust away, or leaves most of it on the table. Not quite sure which way it works. So this is cutting out the feet, the 3 feet plates, or whatever you call them. Running out of room. Every available flat surface covered with something. Nice little jig. Can't beat a good jig. I know I go on about jigs, but they are fantastic. Just build them once, and I've got a right angle, right angle jig, so I know I can sand at right angles. It's quite a cheap sanding machine, but it does the job, and the bits are cast from aluminium or some other alloy. Pretty good. Does enough for the sort of things that I need to do anyway. So there's the foot, and there's one of the cast metal brackets. Just going to position it. I don't want to risk it tipping backwards, so I need something there. I'm going to make it, I think it was about 150, 120 millimeters. And here's just clamping on another sort of jig, if you like. I just want to cut blocks that are going to reinforce the bottom of each foot. And doing it like this means once I've set it up with a ruler once, I can just cut as many as I want without having to keep remeasuring and using a square. I wasn't sure whether to use wood screws to fix these brackets to the base, as I was concerned about the forces involved and just felt more confident in using machine screws. And because these are castings, I'm marking out each one separately, as castings tend to shrink as they cool, and you're never quite sure the quality control of factories that make this sort of thing. I'm going to drill a pilot hole right through, partly to make sure the screw goes in nice and straight, but also it means that if you go right through the piece of wood, it gives you some way of knowing where to drill a rebate on the other side for the screw head. Now set the depth stop on the pillar drill, and then use a flat bit just to drill onto the base of it. Otherwise the heads of the screws will stick out and rest on the floor, which won't be very good. Focus? What's focus? So here we've got the machine screws poked through from the underneath, and the brackets line up perfectly. Always very satisfying. I'm going to screw them down with bolts, which I'm going to use a little socket that fits on the end of the electric hand drill, which is useful because you can set the torque that you want, tighten it, and it'll always stop at the right sort of torque. I think I set it to 1 because I didn't want it to be that tight. It just needs to be firm. Those are the two that are really important. They're going to have quite a lot of force on them with the weight of the machines and fabric. The verticals though, attaching them, I thought I'd just use the wood screws. The wood is thicker, I think it's 33mm thick, so I can have longer wood screws which will be quite adequate. And I'm also going to reinforce the back of each foot, if you like, with another block of wood which will stop the bottom leaning backwards and also give it a little bit of more support. You can see here the amount of distortion you get. Each bracket was different just because castings, and you can see the sand impression on the surface of the casting where it was cast, and they do distort an awful lot as they cool. Normally it would be machined out, but if you're doing brackets it really doesn't matter. Sticking on the reinforcing block at the back. And here are the 3 vertical, the feet and the vertical supports that are finished now. Now to connect the horizontal bits. I armed and ahed and spent many a sleepless night trying to work out whether I could use some clever metal clip or metal plate, but in the end, because I don't use metal that much, I just ended up going with wood. The structure needs to be supported all around. It needs to be very stable vertically and horizontally in both dimensions. So I thought I'd use another bit of the vertical wood to reinforce each end and use bolts to fix it together. So I've got 12 lengths of the 33mm square wood that I use for the vertical supports, and I've just created a really quick jig so I can drill 2 holes for nice long wood screws to fix these onto the ends of the horizontal sections. And here they are. There's 2 central screws that are countersunk, ready for long wood screws to hold them onto the ends of the horizontals, and the top and bottom holes, M8 holes, are for bolts to hold it all together. Nice bit of PVA, good quality PVA on the ends of each piece. It's end grain, so it always takes a little bit more. You can be a bit more generous as it soaks in. And then these are the, I think it was 70mm screws, N5 screws, that are going to hold these on. They'll make sure they are really strong and also support the PVA while it dries as well. Now to mark out where the bolts are going, I've just dropped them on. I've marked out the height of everything, so I'm lining it up carefully, and it just seems simpler just to tap the bolts where they were going to go. That'd be quite sufficient. I could have used rulers and all sorts, but... And here it is. Here's the first 2 vertical bits joined together with a horizontal, and it worked really nicely. Little bit of a problem when you come to the middle, because obviously you want another horizontal that's going to line up with that, and the bolts I'd got weren't long enough, so I needed to get some M8 studding and cut it up. I don't really do that much metal work. Metal's nice to work with, but people tend to fall into one of 2 camps. They either love metal or they love wood, and I love wood, so it's down to hand tools and a abrasive disc just to round off the ends so that the nuts will go on. Now, because I want just one nut, I want to use wing nuts, I need to have one that's fixed on the other end that won't turn, so I'm using some more wonderful super glue just to fix that in place. So now the 3 pieces of studding and the nuts are dry, set, can push the 2 central pieces together with a little bit of wriggling. In the end I drilled them out to 8.5mm diameter holes just to allow a little bit of clearance. But it works perfectly. It clamps the two together nicely. That should hold the centre leg vertical and give a nice sort of lateral support, whatever that means. And here's a lovely old tool, fantastic, mortise gauge. Don't need any rulers or anything else. If you want to scribe a line or mark a line down the centre of a piece of wood, you set it to one side, then to the other. It gives you an idea of how close you're getting, then you can refine your measurement a little bit. And these are as old as the hills as well. Very, very early wood tool that's still used today, which is really nice. And there's the line scribed down the middle of the horizontal support, ready to put the screws in to support the machines. I did the drawing accurately so I can just take off the measurements directly. And I stuck a tape measure along so I could quickly mark each one. And then for some reason, rather than counting along the tape measure, I got a ruler. I'm not sure why I did that. I think I just didn't want to be bothered to do any maths, although there wasn't any involved anyway, so I don't understand. Drilling pilot holes for the support screws onto which the machines will hang. That ensures they'll go in horizontally and be in the right place. And there's the screws. I think they're 25mm long M4 screws, and they're fine. The machines all use keyhole fittings at the back, so they can just hang on to those. And here's the first machine being tested. Lovely. The Nepnet Thrubwell fits on perfectly. And the heraldic clarion doorbell, or door horn should I say. These are quite low machines, so they don't need any support at the bottom, whereas the Gregorian scribulator is quite high. It's quite hangs down a lot, as do the other machines, which is why there is the second support, horizontal support, below that. In addition to that, it also provides a little bit more support to stop the whole thing swaying from side to side. And finally, the barometric prognosticator. And they all fit perfectly, and the whole structure was really stable. I was really pleased with that. Now for decoration, having used these lovely copper ornate ballcock valve floats, I thought it'd be really nice to have something like that, but they cost a fortune, so in the end I went to B&Q and bought some cheap ballcock valve floats. And of course they'd use the most sticky labels, like they do on all their wood. I know they care about their customers, but it's ridiculous. You can get sticky labels that you don't need white spirit to get off. But equally, a little bit of me time, it's very satisfying, especially when the label comes off in large pieces. Very satisfying. And these are only 87p each, I think. And I thought, well, why not just spray them with copper paint? Why spend 40 quid on something? It's absolutely ridiculous. The only thing is that they work with an imperial thread. So I've got an M8 thread here, a tap, which is pretty close to whatever it was on ballcock valves. So I'm just clearing out, cutting a new thread, so the M8 bolts will fit, which is great. Now I need to work out how to support the sign and also the two floats. I ummed and ahed about all sorts of complicated brackets and things, but in the end decided that I'd just screw through, make a hole in the fabric so I could fix it. So here's one of the pieces, the standard piece of wood. This is an 8mm diameter hole ready to accept one of the ballcock valve floats. And I'm going to use one of these clever little things at the bottom to be able to screw into the wood and fix it to the rest of the frame. This has got an M8 thread in the middle, and I think it's about, well, it's a really coarse wooden thread on the outside. So you drill a nice big hole, and then it's got an Allen key socket at one end, so you can tighten it in There's no way that's going anywhere. Once it's level with the surface, you've then got a way of actually bolting that to something else with an M8 bolt, which is perfect. It's ideal for what I want to do. You don't have to have the bolt going right through. And then finally, lovely, spraying them up to make them look like they're made of copper. And possibly trying to keep the camera in focus unsuccessfully. You'd never know. So we've got the frame, which is really strong, very pleased with that, strong and stable. I've also got some fabric, which is blackout fabric, which has got a sort of plastic backing to it, which is really lightproof obviously, and is quite tough. I've used it before and I'm very happy with it. So now, having run out of room in the extension on the workshop, I'm having to come into the kitchen, marking out with chalk pencil type thing. Don't like fabric really. I much prefer rigid things like wood, plastic and metal. But what are you going to do? Speed it up cutting out, never that easy. And I thought I'd use Velcro, the self-adhesive Velcro tape, to fix it onto the frame. So the fluffy side is going onto the fabric, so I can roll it up, fold it without any damage, without having the hooks and the whatever you call them damage the stiffer side of it. So this is just the fluffiness. Staining the two supports for the signs at the top, just so if you see them from the side you won't see wood. And the reason I haven't filmed any of the hole drilling is because I found the tripod was great to support the long lengths of wood while I drilled holes in them. I'm fixing the hooks this time. So fixing the hooks onto the back of the horizontals and then bolting them together for the first time. Again, luckily I had lots of M8 bolts that were just the right length for this sort of thing. The wing nuts make it easy just to tighten it all together without any special tools. Pretty awful end to a piece of wood, but never mind. And there's one of the special fittings, sort of captive nuts if you like, and another bit of studding that I glued a wing nut onto the end of, and that's perfect. That just sticks out really nicely. I also used the same captive nuts to fix the right and left leg, vertical legs, to the horizontal at the top. And then the fabric, which was a joy. I didn't know what to expect, but it really, the Velcro just held it in place perfectly without any creases. Now I need to obviously make some holes for bolts to go through and for the screws to hang the machines onto. So I tried using a scalpel, sort of try some different techniques, but it was a little bit unpredictable. So then a pair of scissors, and if you fold the fabric in half, obviously if you cut a perfect semicircle you get a perfect hole, but easier said than done, especially in the right place. So in the end I thought I'd, well, try melting it. So I got my trusty old soldering iron, and sure enough it did work really well. And the good thing was also with the soldering iron, other than the smoke, was that here's the cut hole, and you can see if you put lots of force on it, it starts ripping. But with the melted hole, it's melted the woven fabric at the front to the plastic background and it doesn't crack. Luckily I'd got a more powerful soldering iron, this was a 25-watt one, and it just perfect. Melted the hole and sealed the edges. Now I need to make 4 more supports, M8 supports for the floats, the copper floats, so if only it were this quick. Rounding the edges off. And then gluing them in with some more fabulous super glue. I'm wearing a cotton glove simply because the copper paint takes days and days to set properly. It says it doesn't, but if you touch it you get fingerprints all over it really quickly. And I'm really pleased with that. There's the hole I've melted in the end, and it just looks really nice. Lovely sort of sheen on it. So the final thing is to get the sign made. Now I started off using Times New Roman, but I really wasn't happy. A lot of the machines I use are a font called Maleficent, Magnificent or something or other. So I thought I'd use that. The only thing is it hasn't got any lowercase, so I've had to design and add some things like full stops. And despite it being a web page address, it just looks so nice. It's such a lovely font. I'm happy with that. So that's a sort of representation of what it's going to look like. I've reduced it down onto a sheet, a full-size sheet on the CAD software, so that I can print it as tiles on the printer. This means I don't have to pay someone else a fortune to print it full size. I can assemble it myself. And by the way, this printer is brilliant. It's networkable and it uses huge bottles of ink. It wasn't very expensive, and it's the ET2750. I can really wholeheartedly recommend it with a scanner on top. I'm going to use an old piece of foam board to assemble the sign. Foam board's brilliant. This is 1 metre high. It's a piece of foam between 2 pieces of cardboard, which makes it really, really tough. Here's all the tiles that have been printed out, and you can say whether you want to have crop marks, which is useful if you have them, so you can know how big to cut each one. So the equipment we need: cutting mat and a ruler and a scalpel, nice and sharp, and some lovely old photo mount, which is great. You could use Pritt stick, but it tends to wrinkle the paper up. I got halfway across and realised stupidly that I hadn't left enough room, so I had to peel it all off and start again. There you go, planning ahead. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. There's the finished one. It's not too bad, that you can see a few lines here and there, but having stuck it up with some more Velcro, it does look really nice. And I couldn't believe there's 3mm between this and the fluorescent tube. It is just meant to be. It's incredible, divine intervention. So the screws poke through the holes that I've cut with the soldering on, and I'm just endeavouring to fit all the machines on just to see what it finally looks like. So the Gregorian scrupulator, you can see when I made this video, Monday the 12th of August. The lovely climatic revelator with the chimes going. And the chronological engine. I was very pleased because as I hung each one up, the structure didn't wobble very much at all. It didn't sway from side to side, and I didn't feel hesitant at all about hanging these things up there. It really was stable. I was very pleased. And there we have it. 2 lovely copper floats with the QR code and the title and things. And then all the other machines, with Spider-Man trying to make an appearance. Very pleased. It's worked really well. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully, well, never know, I may see you at Lincoln. This has all been in order to appear at Lincoln Asylum this summer. Thanks again. Bye.